it's not 1. And so we've got some steps that we need to do first. And so the very first step, whenever we factor, we look to see if there's something in common with all the terms. And if there is, we're going to factor that out. Okay, so we're going to look to see if maybe 2 will divide all the terms, or 3, or some number divides all the terms. And if we could do that, we're going to go ahead and take that number out. And so if we still factor out the GCF and our coefficient of x squared is still not 1, say for example it's 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever, we must factor it a different way, and we're going to look at that. So real quick, if we look at this, we've got to factor this 7x squared plus 29x plus 4. So our first step is to look at all the numbers, 7, 29, and 4. Is there a common number with all of those?
No.
No, there's not. Okay, so then now I look and I say, oh, that's not 1, that's a 7. So now I've got to factor this a different way. And it's similar to what we've done, it's just we've got a little extra step in there. What I'm going to do, instead of just looking at the last term, remember how I would just look at the last term before? I'm going to multiply the first and the last. When I do that, what do I get?
28.
So I'm looking for 2 factors of 28. Now that's my key term. Now I'm going to do everything else the same. 2 factors of 28 that add to 29. And what are those 2 factors of 28? 28 and 1. And then how do I get a positive 29 from those 2 numbers? Positive and positive. Now this next step is going to look a little weird. So what I'm going to do is write it all out, and then I'm going to explain what I did. Okay. Just look real quick and see if you think you see what I did. What did I do?
The 29x, 28 plus 4x plus 1x.
Let's look at the original problem here.
I subtracted 1 from 29.
Okay, if I look at the original problem here, 7x squared plus 29x plus 4, and I compare it to this one right here, I'm going to notice everything's the same, except for instead of being 29x, I wrote it as 28x and 1x. So basically, I wrote the same problem as what I did at the top, except for I used these 2 numbers. Now, when I have 4 terms, we looked at this briefly. When I have 4 terms, remember how I factor these? I group them together. And I'm looking for something in common in that first group. What's in common with that first group? 7x. So if I take a 7x, so if I take a 7 from 7, what does that leave me with? 1. X from x squared, what does that leave me with? X plus. 7 times what gives me 28? 4, and I've already taken the x out, so that's good. Now in this next bunch, I have a 1x and a 4. Is anything in common there? 1. There you go. And that leaves me with x plus 4. Now if you've done this correct, these will match. And that is one of my factors. What's my other factor going to be? My other factor is going to be whatever's on the outside, remember? And so here we go. This is my other factor. My kids in Algebra 2 call that the phone. They say it kind of looks like a phone handle. So anyway, 7x plus 1. All right, let's try another one. Okay. What's the very first step? What's the very first step? See if there's any common factors. Is there any common factors?
Yes.
3. 3 goes into all. So I'm going to take a 3 out. So if I take a 3 from 3x squared, I get
X squared.
x squared plus
5 squared.
x squared
I mean,
plus
X.
5x plus 6. Oh, look inside the parentheses. What do you notice?
It works.
That is something that we just did. So we don't need to do the first and the last, because look at this. What's the coefficient right here? 1. Okay, so I don't need to do that long drawn out thing. So let's go ahead. I look at the last term. 2 factors of 6 that
2 and 3.
Add 2, 5. What are they?
2 and 3.
2 and 3. It's not 6 and 1. Because 6 and 1 add 2, 7. How do you get a positive 5 from these two? Add them. Okay? So, I first of all need to keep out my 3. The 3 stays outside. And now remember, I have 2 quantities. You can only do the 2 quantities like this when you have a coefficient of 1 as your x squared term. What are my 2 amounts going to be? X plus 2, and then x plus 3. And there you go, you're done. So that's why you want the 1x squared. You don't want to do that extra work that we did on that problem before. Okay. All right, let's look at this one. We're looking for something in common with all 3. Is there something in common? No. So now we're in trouble. Well, not in trouble, but we've got a little more work to do because this isn't 1. So do we remember what we do? Multiply 5 and 6, and I get
30.
So 2 factors of 30 that add to 13.
2 and 3.
2 factors of 30 that add to 13. Remember, we don't put our positive and negatives until this step right now. So I've got 2 factors of 13 or 30, 10 and 3. How do you get a positive 13 from both of those? Both of them are positive. So then now, let's look at my next step. My next step is going to be to basically rewrite the top problem, except for in place of 13, what am I going to put? 10x plus 3x plus 6. Does it matter the order that I put those in?
Yes.
No. Okay, let's do this. 5x squared plus 3x plus 10x plus 6. Okay, we're going to work through each of these, and I'm going to show you it really doesn't matter. So it doesn't matter the order in which you write them. Let's go ahead and group. What can you take out here?
5x
5x. What does that leave me with?
x 2
Plus 2. Good. What can you take out here?
3
3. What do you get?
x plus 2
X plus 2. So one of my factors is x plus 2. Good. The other factor? 5x plus 3. So now let's see if in fact I get the same thing over here. What's in common from this first bunch? X. And so that leaves me with 5x plus 3. What can I take out from the second bunch?
2
2, and I get
5x plus 3
So if you notice, 5x plus 3 is one of your quantities. And then your other one is x plus 2. So the only thing that's different if you put them in a different order is going to be the one that's in common. So that means that you could do the problem differently than the person next to you and still get the same correct answer. Alrighty, with that in mind, let's look at this one. What's different?
You can negative
There's a minus sign, and what else?
You can make a
Yeah, there's a common factor of 2. So let's take that 2 out. So if I take that 2 out, what am I left with?
3x squared
Yep.
plus 11x minus 4.
Okay, so I want you to do the very first step and get for me the 2 factors that I'm going to use. So right now, get out a sheet of scrap paper, you do that very first step, find for me the 2 factors that I'm going to use.
You can do it like that even if the coefficient isn't
Even when what?
one. The coefficient isn't one, so I don't know.
If the coefficient isn't 1, then you need 2 to take it out. So. So now when I'm saying the 2 factors, I'm looking for the 2 numbers that I'm going to use. Does anybody have those numbers yet? What are they going to be?
Negative
Negative
12,
12 and
negative
1.
11, negative 12 and negative 1. Negative 12 and
First
wait,
times
12 and
last.
negative 1.
So 2 factors of 12 that differ by 11. So there'll be 12 and 1. Remember, you get a positive 11 from a positive 12 and a negative 1. Okay. Now, what I want you to do, I'm just going to leave that 2 out front, okay, and then I've got a big quantity here. I want you to write what the next step would be. What would I put in those parentheses? Oh. All right, so what we should have inside the parentheses is 3x squared plus 12x minus 1x minus 4. Okay? Now this next step we're going to do together as a group because, yeah, that can, I think, create some problems. And where we can create some problems with is this negative. Okay, so notice how I'm going to group the negative inside with the 1. So in my first quantity, what can I take out? 3x. And that leaves me with?
X plus 4.
4. What can you take out from negative 1x and negative 4? Negative 1. And then when you take a negative 1 from negative 1x, you get x. Negative 1 from negative 4, you get positive 4. So then now I'm going to leave that 2 right out front. So basically, once you take that 2 out, you just always write it down every step, and you're just going to leave it there. My first quantity will be what? X plus 4, because that's the quantity here that's in common. My next quantity will be
3x minus 1.
3x minus 1. Good. And then that's what we'll do. Okay, we're going to go ahead and look at another one. 3x squared minus 17x plus 20. Okay? Is there something in common?
No.
No. So I want you to do the very first step. Find for me the 2 numbers that we're going to use. Very first step. Find for me the 2 numbers that we're going to use. Okay, real quick, a lot of you multiplied, and what's the number I'm looking for? 60. Now, this is where we're making a mistake, okay? This is 2 factors of 60 that add to 17. Now, you can't use the positive and negatives yet. We're just looking for 2 basic numbers. Then when I add them together, I get 17. It's not going to be 20 and 3. Because when I add 20 and 3 together, I get 23. So 2 factors of 60 that add to 17. What are those 2 numbers? 5 and 12. Now we attach the positive and negative signs. So now I have to look and say, okay, how can I get a negative 17 from these 2 numbers? Negative and negative. Okay, I want you to do the next step. So go ahead and rewrite that step for me. Okay, once you get it rewritten, I want you to go ahead and factor it down and try and get a final answer for me. Okay, and be careful with the negatives. Yeah, just make me feel better about myself.
A tablet is,
What?
a tablet is, yeah, it has my, it's tablet, sure.
It's easier, it's simpler. You guys really have to have time. It's You might need to run away from
Okay, so if I rewrite my term, I should get 3x squared minus 5x minus 12x plus 20. Okay, let's go ahead and group those together. So I'm looking for something in common with this first group. Something in common is 1x, and it's going to leave me with 3x minus 5. Now what's in common here is going to actually be a negative 4. Now some of you are probably wondering, why'd you take out a negative 4? Because if I would have taken a positive 4 out, this would have been a negative 3x. We don't want a negative 3x. I want a positive 3x. So my quantities, my one that's in common is 3x minus 5. My other one is the phone call, x minus 4. Okay. Well, it kind of looks like the phone. Here we go. This is where your other one is. Glasses? Okay. So headphones, something like that.
Earmuffs.
All right. So, okay, this is going to be our last one that we're going to do today, and then we'll pick up with this tomorrow. So 2n squared minus n plus 1. So what am I going to do? What's in common?
One.
Nothing. Yep, it's 1. And so then now I'm going to multiply first and last. So 2 factors of 2 that
Add to 1.
add to 1.
1 plus 1. It's impossible.
No solution.
What? 2 factors of 2 that add to 1?
Negative 1 and 2.
You can't use negatives. So what are the only 2 factors of 2 that we have? 1 and 2. So they don't add to 1, right? So this one you can't do. And so whenever you can't factor something out, you write the word prime. You don't write, I know in the past we've written like no solution, things like that. When you can't factor something, you write prime. And you're done.
Is there a symbol for it?
No, there's not a symbol for it. You
What
just
if you
have
don't
to
know how to
write
spell it?
Can we make
Now-
Make one?
Yeah.
This is what I need you to do. Okay? This is not due tomorrow. But what I would like you to do is get a start. So by a start, that means 5 or 6 problems. Try and get those done so that you have a good base so that tomorrow when we continue, okay, it'll be a little more clear. So page 513, 10 through 21. And as I said, try and get a start. We'll continue with it tomorrow.